Okay, I'm Frank Maury. I'm living here in Hendersonville, relocated from New York. Back in 1951, I graduated high school and enlisted in the Army, gung-ho. At that time, I was in New York, like I stated before, and they shipped me down to South Carolina with the Dixie Division, the 31st, and they were happy to see a Yankee, I'll tell you that. But anyway, I stayed with them for about a year and a half, did my basic training, my advanced basic, and they shipped out to Camp McCoy, Indiana. And I really didn't have an inkling to stay with them, so I volunteered for temporary duty back with the home base. At that time, they were looking for volunteers to go over to Korea. Not knowing any better, as a young fellow that I am, I volunteered. All right, from there they shipped me out to California. California, they put me on a troop ship. I spent 14 days going over there. And when I got there, I went to a Repel Center, and they put me with the 45th Division, Oklahoma Indians. So I went from the 31st Rebels to the 45th Indians. That time, we were an infantry outfit. I was a heavy weapons specialist with a recoilless rifle, and we provided frontline support for the rifle companies. And I stayed with them for my duration in Korea, which was from August 52 to July 53. Right before the armistice, I rotated home. I had spent 11 months and 16 days exactly there, and I accumulated enough frontline points to rotate. Last position we were in, we went up in January, and we stayed online until July. That was a long time, but it worked out okay. After that, I returned to the States. My rank was a sergeant first class. At the age of 18, I was a platoon sergeant, and we really didn't have any platoon leaders, so I had the whole ball of wax. I returned to the States. They assigned me down to Fort Riley, Kansas for a weapons school, which I taught recoilless rifles and other weapons. At that time, I had 6 months left. I spent my time there. At the end of the 6 months, I got a discharge. I had completed my 3 years service, and I didn't have to do any reserve time because I went in before they passed that law. And then at that time, I came back to New York, stayed there for a while, met my wife, finally got married, and we relocated to North Carolina.
Thank you.
That's it. End the report.
Back up to where you were telling about your name.
Yeah, I didn't know my name was Giuseppe until I went and got a birth certificate when I joined the Army, and it said on the birth certificate, Giuseppe Novella, and of course I always went by Joseph Novella in school and all my life, and that's when I found out that my name was Giuseppe when I went in the Army. And I had 4 other brothers. 2 served in the Army. My brother Ralph served in the Korean War the same time I did. He was attached to the Korean Rock Marine Division. He was on quad 50s, 4-point zone, 9 months, and he rotated. He was at Korea the same time I was. And then I had a brother in the Navy, one in the Marines, and another in the Army that served in Germany. There was 5 of us. We all served in the military. That's about it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My oldest granddaughter has a degree in architecture, but between her junior and senior year, she studied in Korea. And I told her, I said, well, the Korea you went to doesn't look anything like the Korea that I went to 60 years ago. So, but she loved it over there. And I would be anxious to go back just to see what Korea looks like now, because when I went through Seoul the first time, it was about this high. And I would be interested to see, because I understand it's one of the most modern cities in the world. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir, for your service.
Thank you.
Go.
My name is Paul Vaughn. I served in the Army from 52 to 1954, and then again in 1957 as a second lieutenant. But I was drafted in 1952, took my basic training at Fort Leonard Wood. I was a combat engineer. I took advanced training at Fort Belvoir, and I got to Korea near the end of the war. They eventually sent me to division headquarters where I served with G3. I actually deciphered the top secret message that sent the French battalion to Indochina, which became Vietnam. And that particular unit suffered 100% casualties later. My duty was pretty safe. I got out early because I decided to go back to college and get my degree. When I graduated from college, I accepted a commission in the West Virginia National Guard, and I finished up my duty. I was the rank of captain. Incidentally, I went from corporal to second lieutenant. Not many people do that, but my military experience was pretty unexciting. Spent more time on ships than anything else. I spent 42 days on board ships, which when I was in college, I talked to a man that had been in the Navy, and he said, I didn't spend that much time on ships. So, what else?
That's it.
Okay.
Okay. We'll let it definitely.
Well, that was easy.
Yeah. Just
I could really get wound up.
that would be great.
I do that on the telephone.
Okay.
I said, this is WVA. High above the...
You in the shortwave? In the shortwave?
Lord, no. I can barely turn on my computer. I had a neighbor, though, that was a shortwave, and I would be recording, and I lived a block away, and it would...
My name is Donald C. Heekins. I live in Hendersonville, North Carolina. I live on 104 Wolf Shoals Drive, 28739. I'm a veteran of the Korean War, and I really appreciate what they have done for us and what we've done for them. Most of all, what we've done for them. They really appreciate it. They show joy in their hearts every time we meet up with a Korean person. I belong to the chapter 314 of the vets in Hendersonville, and we have a close-knit group, and would love to have more. There are a lot of men out there yet that are Korean War vets, and would like to have them show up and join in our group. I was over in Korea in 53, 54, and I spent 17 months over there. I enjoyed what I saw, but there was a lot of unhappiness over there, which for sure is a sure thing because of what took place. But we as Americans and the other countries brought these people together and renewed their country for them. So we know too that there's also a joy in knowing that we can have a trip back to Korea paid for by the Korean government. It's a free trip, and we're looking forward to it. I was with the 25th Infantry Division in Korea. I spent 18 months, 19 months over there, and I realized that something was so wonderful was meeting up with people I've never known before, and to realize that we are pretty well off over here in the United States. The story with the chapter that we belong with here in Hendersonville has put out calls for having new members show up in our group. And the more the members that show up in our group, the more we learn as to what they went through over there. Right now I'm retired. I'm 83 years old this coming April, and I enjoy life with my wife and I. I golf, and I'm capable of doing as much now as I did before. My life has been good only because of what Jesus Christ did for me. He's my Savior. He's my life. And I have three children, 2 children, 3 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. And they're all children of God. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity of giving you some information on my life and the life I hope to have in the future. Thank you.
Yep. Going down. Okay, well, I went in the Army in January of 1952. Served basic at Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. Infantry training for 4 months. And then we took a troop train from Pennsylvania to Pittsburgh, California to go overseas. And then, of course, the guys were all shipping out, and I said, man, they must have forgot about me. I'm still here. So all of a sudden, my name came up for an air packet. So I flew from California to Hawaii, Wake Island, Japan, and then from Japan, it took I think a 3-day trip by ship to get to Korea. I remember being on the ship with my M1, and the sight came off, and you know, when you're young and 18, you don't know what's going to happen. You think you're going to come off the ship like you see in a movie, you know? So we went to a repo depot in Korea, and then they assigned us to different units. I was assigned to 263 Ordnance Ammo Company. It was an ammo dump. And just before I got there, a third of that dump was blowed up. And it had shells laying all over the place, big holes in the ground, and you had to watch yourself. I remember picking up a big round off the ground and moving it so we can get by. I used to be on the armored car. I was on a 50 caliber machine gun, and I was radio operator. And we used to patrol the ammo dump. And we did that for probably around 4 or 5 months. And then the outfit was going to move to up north. So what they did, to bring us up to strength, they emptied all the stockades in Korea and brought us up to strength. So you know what kind of men we had in our outfit. So we moved up there and started a new ammo dump right near Seoul, Korea. We started a new ammo dump up there because the Chinese pushed them all back in 51 back to the perimeter, so it was starting to stretch back out again. So when we were up there on that ammo dump, they made me, of course I was in Korea for a while, they made me in charge of weapons. So I was in charge of all the weapons in the outfit. And of course I gave some lessons on 50 calibers and different weapons like that to some of the fellows. But one night around about, I guess it was about a month or two after the truce was signed, I was already there a year, And this one fella threw a rock and hit a guy in the back of the head. And he was one of these guys that was left out of jail and put in our outfit. And when I saw that, I said to myself, you know, this guy's going to maybe try to get a weapon. So I run back to the tent. We had these big squad tents. And I run back to the tent, and I had a guy named Como who was my assistant. He was on duty. And no sooner I came into the tent, here his guys coming in through the back. So it was quick thinking that I did this. And what it did, it stopped him from coming in getting a weapon because he wanted to go out there and just shoot a bunch of guys. Why else would he want to get a weapon? So anyway, I did stop that. And then right after that, I got promoted to corporal. I don't forget that. That's probably how they rewarded me for my duty, right? And then, of course, later I rotated and came home for Christmas from Korea and spent 30 days on leave. And then I reported back to Georgia, and they sent me to Fort Bragg, North Carolina, military intelligence, because I spoke Italian, and they put me in intelligence. But let me tell you something, we had good intelligence back in the 54 because they were asking for volunteers back then for Vietnam from Fort Bragg, taking guys to volunteer to go to Vietnam as advisors. And of course I didn't go. I stayed at Bragg for a year. I was in the military intelligence at Fort Bragg. And then of course I got discharged. I went in the reserve, active reserve. And of course I made up sergeant first class in the reserve. I gave some classes on 50s and classes on different things in the reserves. And there was a fellow in the artillery outfit, which was a friend of mine. He was a company commander. He asked me about coming to transfer into his outfit. It was artillery. He wanted me to be his first sergeant. I gave it some thought, and I said, well, I already had almost 8 years of service, counting the reserve and the active duty, so I decided I was going to just get out and get out of it, and that's what I did.
And your name and rank and so on?
Giuseppe Novella, Sergeant First Class. That was my rank. Yep.